Hey, hi all, welcome back to the channel again. Today we are going to discuss about data binding process in Angular, how it works and what are all types of it and how many ways we can, bind data to particular HTML element. Data binding is actually a process of connecting HTML element with the TypeScript class variables or methods or class properties or methods, right? So there are actually two types of data binding available. The first one is one-way data binding and the second one is two-way data binding. We will look into one-way data binding, some of the types of data binding we will look in today's video, and in next video we are looking into remaining data binding types. So in this video I'll just list it out what ever we are looking into this video. The first data binding thing is string interpolation, then the second one is event binding, then the third one is property binding, and the last one is attribute binding. So these four types of binding we are going to look into this video, and the class binding, style binding, and two-way data binding we are going to look into the next video. So let's start the one-way data binding types. So first type is the string interpolation type. One-way data binding is a type of data binding which actually binds only one way, that is nothing but from component to template. And two-way data binding is binded two ways. It can be changed from template also. It starts with TypeScript class and ends at template, and again to change the value of that particular property it starts with HTML and ends at TypeScript class. Again it starts with TypeScript class and ends at HTML. So it is kind of two-way data binding. So in this video we are going to look some of the type of one-way data binding only. So I'm creating a variable of type string. Let's say LearnLift-Eng. So to represent this variable or to render this variable, we can do that using string interpolation syntax. So as you can see, double starting curly brackets and double ending curly brackets. This is the syntax of text interpolation or string interpolation, we can say that. So if I refresh the browser, you can see LearnLift has been printed over here, right? Another way of showing data using interpolation is nothing but we can loop through a particular list. So let's say we have a list of string array. Let's say A, then we have B, then we'll have C. So let's loop through this list on a UL tag. I'm using a structural directive ng for let L of list, and over here inside this tag we can interpolate it using the same syntax. So if I save this and run it again, you can see the ABC has been printed. Another way of string interpolation is nothing but we can have an input type text, right? Then we will have a template variable over here. Let's say txt. We need to give a name to it, otherwise it will give us a warning that input should have either name or ID property attached to it. So this kind of warning we will get if we do not give the name or ID property of particular input type. So let's give a name that text, and let's bind the input event. Let's have show text as a method, and let's pass it $event. Now our $event, else we can make use of this local variable as well, txt.value. So show text, we need to add this method over here. It actually expects some parameter of val of type any. Let's create a variable input val null and then assign this val to this input val. So this dot input val is equal to val, and let's render this input val below this text, right? So this is the one way we can use it. So let's say learn lift eng. So as soon as I'm typing, it is updating the below text, right? So this is the one way we can use the string interpolation as well, right? Now let's look at how we can bind events. For event binding, as you have already seen over here, we have binded an event, but let's look at another example. Let's say we have a button. It says click me, right? I need to bind an event to this, right? So what I can do, to bind an event, you need to use the parenthesis, right? Inside a parenthesis, whatever event that particular HTML tag provides us, you can see all those lists over here. You can add that event. So let's say we need to add a click event over here. Let's say show text, maybe, or not show text, but show alert. And to this we can pass $event. Now let's add this show alert method over here. So we are expecting an event over here of type any. Let's log it console.log e. What we did over here, we have a opening and closing parenthesis. Inside that we have added a name of that particular event, and we have binded this method or this callback function to this particular event. Okay, so now to bind it, we are using parenthesis. So look at this, actually what it is. It is a parameter of type event, and it's a global event object, we can say, and Angular actually uses this event object everywhere. Whenever it does not depend on you can use it only on a button or only on a div. You can use this everywhere in any type of HTML tag. You can bind any event, and inside that event callback function you can pass this $event. It will act, it will contain the value of it will will depends on which type of element you are attaching or binding the event. Okay, so let's say we are binding event on the button. If you want to bind the same event on the input, then the type of this event will gets changed. So right now it is a mouse type of event, but if you do this same thing on the input, so it will act as an input event. Okay, so this is how it differs, but the name is same. You can use everywhere $event. Angular actually changes its type dynamically where it is being called based on that. So let's say we have that, and if you go to console, if I click it, you can see the pointer event over here, right? And now if I do not use $text, sorry, hash text over here, I can directly use the $event over here. And if I log this e of type any, and then e dot target dot value console.log e, now you can see what type of event it is actually providing us. So you can see it is providing us event that is nothing but input event, and if I click on the button, it provides us pointer event, right? So as I said you earlier, this type of event is depend on the type of HTML on which you are binding the callback method or on which you are binding the event, right? So Angular decides actually the type of event dynamically based on the tags. Now let's look at the property binding, how we can bind a particular property. So properties are nothing but in case of input we have a value as a property, right? In case of image, we have a source as a property, then we have required as a property, right? And attributes. So there is a difference between attribute and property. Attributes are different and properties are different. Attribute is nothing but this one, type. Then we have a name as attribute. Then we have a placeholder as attribute. Attributes are native to that particular input element, and values are also native, but there are slightly difference in between that. We will learn those things in upcoming videos as we grow and as we add more and more videos. So I can explain you, or maybe we can just create a dedicated video on that as well in future. So there is a slight difference in between that. So let's understand how we can um, bind the particular property. So let's say I have input type, let's say text, right? And we want to bind the property value to this, that is nothing but input val, let's say. So what we are doing over here, so whatever we will type over here, it will reflect into this particular text box. So what we are doing over here, we are binding the property. So the syntax of property binding is nothing but square brackets, the start square bracket, then we have a property name, and then it should be enclosed by the end square bracket, right? So let's say we are typing over here. So once we type it, it actually renders that. So as you can see, it is changing the text, right? LearnLift-Eng, like this. Now let's try to learn about attribute binding as well. So as I told you, attribute binding are also the same as we are using the property binding. To bind an attribute, there is the same syntax. So as you can see, we can bind this attribute over here of type. So let's say we have a type as text initially. It will render us a text box. Okay. So now this is nothing but a text box, as you can see. The type of it is actually text. So now what I can do, I can change it to password. So once I change it to password, it actually renders the password. So whatever I type, it is masked over here. Okay. Why? Because its type has now a password type. Okay. So this is how you can, play around with properties and the attributes. Okay. And this is actually a syntax of event binding and string interpolation. We have learned the starting double curly brackets and ending double curly brackets. Between that, you can add the local variables. Okay. So it will show, or it will actually evaluates the value of it, and it will show inside that. One more thing about interpolation I want to tell, there are some limitations using the interpolation. So limitations are, we actually cannot use assignment operators over here. Okay, so we cannot set any value to the variables. It just strictly rendering purpose we can use it. If you want to change the value of certain variables, you can change the value of this variable. Maybe for example, let's say this variable. So if I want to change the value of this, I cannot use assignment operator over here and change its value. I can only change its value inside the TS file. Another thing is, you cannot use new keyword. So if you want to use new keyword, you can do it in the TS file, but in the interpolation syntax you cannot use that. Then we have type of and instance of keywords, right, to check the type and instances, right? So you cannot use that as well over here. Then we have increment and decrement operators. So as we have we increment or decrement variables based on certain values, so that thing you cannot do over here. Okay, so these are some limitations. we cannot do that, or the text interpolation or string interpolation does not allows us. Okay, so this is all about interpolation, event binding, property binding, and attribute binding. So these are all type of one-way data binding only. And in the next video, we are going to look the class binding and style binding. These both as well, these types as well, kind of are a type of single data binding only, okay, or one-way data binding only. But still, there are multiple ways to bind a class and multiple ways to bind a style. So those we will look into next video, and again, like the two-way data binding as well. Okay, so this is how it is. I hope you like this video. If you like it, so you can like on the video, you can hit like button, you can share this video with your friends. Do not forget to subscribe the channel and hit the bell icon so that you never miss any upcoming updates from this channel. Thanks all guys, let's meet in next video.